Hey Laura, thanks for joining the show today. Can you give us a little bit of background on your experience in UX and some of the books and courses you've taught through the years?
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
So I have been in tech in the Silicon Valley for about 25 years now. I actually started out very early in research, and then I switched and I became an engineer and learned how to program. And it was the late 90s when we were all sort of figuring stuff out. And then I was a front end engineer, and then in sort of the early 2000s, I realized that I still liked research and I liked programming, but that what I really liked about it was understanding users and making things for them and actually developing the front end of things. And so I got super lucky, and I got to join a little design consultancy, and they sort of I got to do the research and I got to do the prototyping part, and then they sort of taught me the middle bit, which they called at the time interaction design, and I still call it interaction design because hey, I'm old school. And yeah, I learned how to do user-centered design for many years, and then I joined IMVU, which was the original lean startup that I worked directly for Eric Ries,
Yep.
and I learned all about metrics and actually measuring things, and it was great because I got to bring my human-centered design background, and then I also got to learn about um, how to measure things and how we can do A/B tests, and I kind of fell in love with that, and it changed the way I design a little bit, not entirely. I still do all of the other stuff as well, um, but I kind of combined the two and started writing about combining qualitative and quantitative research back in about 2009,
hmm
and that led to writing two books. And a couple of ebooks and all kinds of things, and doing some consulting on, lean, UX for lean startups, and just UX in general. And I've done a lot of teaching and writing since then, and consulting with startups and large companies and all kinds of things. So I bounce back and forth now between, sometimes I'm like the head of product, sometimes I do design, sometimes I do teaching, and I just bounce around and do all those kinds of things because I like them all.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the background there. And so you have a new book on, it's like designing with Agile. Can you tell us what the impetus was for that?
So it's actually a course. I'm doing a course.
Oh,
I
of
always
course.
like to
Okay.
say, I always like to correct people because I have I have I have it on record as saying if I ever write another book, I want somebody to punch me in the face, and I don't want anybody to take me up on that because I swear it's not a book. It feels like writing a book. I'll be perfectly honest because
Yeah.
it's a big course. I'm doing it in conjunction with IXDF, which is the Interaction Design Foundation, and it is on designing in an agile environment. And my goal with the course, and I've done a bunch of research talking. I've designed for agile teams before. I've been on agile teams before. I've run them before, and but I also wanted to go out and do a bunch of research with other folks who are on agile teams,
Yeah.
because here's what I have found in my own experience, and then also the research really backed this up. There's no such thing as agile teams. Like literally one of the lessons is just called "There is no agile," and I all of the agilistas, any agilista who's listening is just now yelling and screaming at this guy. I'm like, look, let's be honest. There is the sort of platonic ideal of
Yeah.
agile as represented in the Agile Manifesto, which I'm a huge fan of, even though it doesn't have any design in it. But I think it's got a lot of great points. I think it's a great way of working. I love this idea of designing or building small things and getting feedback and
hmm
doing things iteratively, and accepting the fact that we don't know everything we're supposed to do and we can't predict the future. All of these things I think are fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, and then you get out into the real world, and then you talk to real people who are on agile teams, and I absolutely mean it with the air quotes. Like, these are agile teams,
Yeah.
and every single one of them is different.
That's interesting feedback there. What about the design angle of Agile? Like designers come from every corner of the world with every mindset, and Agile probably wasn't created for UX. Do you think it's the
Wasn't.
best way to design? Or how do you think designers should fit into that system, or should they?
Do I think it's the best way to design? I think it's a good way to make certain kinds of products. Design isn't useful on its own. Design is, again, I always kind of say something is not a thing. Design is not a thing that
hmm
we do for itself. design is a thing that we do to create better products for humans.
Yep.
Presumably, and hopefully in some ways to create better societies and to create better outcomes. It's a thing that we use to create better outcomes. And I think that Agile is a great way to develop certain kinds of products and outcomes. Is it perfect for everything? Probably not. Right? Are there elements of it that could be extremely useful in developing everything? Probably, honestly. Like I love the iterativeness of it, and I love the fact that we do get things in front of people and we do try them out, and those work beautifully with true human-centered design, or user-centered design, or whatever you want to call it. Those that let's show people a thing and get feedback on the thing and improve it, and those are all very compatible with a lot of design.
So let's talk about measurement. What's a good way to measure the effectiveness of design? Or should it be measured? Like how should it be measured?
So Kate Rudder, my co-host podcast, the co-host of my podcast, is writing a book on this right now. So we've been talking a lot about this just between us. And I'm strongly of the opinion that if your design doesn't deliver some kind of return on investment, like why are they paying you? On the other hand, we just did an episode about designing for complex products, and I will admit that certain kinds of design changes are extremely hard to measure the return on, because each individual one sort of contributes to a particular feeling. The example that I used in that actually was my Mini Cooper, which Mini Coopers they're not the best car. They're very fun to drive and they're extremely cute, and they just have this sort of Mini Cooper feeling. A lot of the design decisions kind of contribute to that Mini Cooper feeling. And so you can kind of quibble with any one of them, but like the fact that, so I have this, mine's electric, and you turn it on by flipping a switch, and the switch is just in the least intuitive place that you could possibly imagine. But when you turn it on, it sounds like a little spaceship. And that's fun. Like and did I buy the car because of that? No, that would be insane. But does it sort of add to the Mini Cooperness of it?
Right.
Yes. It's more sort of what is the feeling that you are delivering for your users. The choice that they made was to make it sound like a little spaceship. And again, you need to have some sound when it turns on, or you wouldn't know that the car was on. Right?
Yeah,
for they're silent.
Yeah.
So you need to have some sound. So then the question is, here's the thing, knowing designers, I know that some sound designers spent a really long time coming up with kind of the perfect sound. And I know that there was some engineer who was rolling their eyes and saying,
absolutely.
Hey, pick a sound. Right? But it mattered. Now, did it matter a huge amount? No. Did it matter some? It's really hard to measure that.
Yeah.
Do all of those decisions taken together, the sort of cuteness and the little touches and the fact that I'm now talking about the sound that it makes and all of that, do all of those things matter? Yeah, absolutely. It does matter overall. So there's those kinds of design decisions that are incredibly hard to measure. There are other kinds of design decisions that are incredibly easy to measure. And I think that designers often push back even on measuring those, and that frustrates me.
Well, what's an example there?
So a lot of times the things that I'm designing, because I'm more of an interaction designer, will be things like, we need to improve the onboarding of this process. Right? We need to get more people. A bunch of people are trying to do this thing and they're failing to do it. And we would like fewer people to fail to do it. And that is 100% measurable. And those are all design decisions, right? So that's an easy design decision. That's to measure, to get the ROI in.
Yeah.
Well, now, if I'm going to come in and I'm going to say, oh, the problem is you don't have pretty enough illustrations, in this process to move people through and get them to the end of it, which is kind of the equivalent of it needs to make a sound when you turn it on, right? Like, oh, it needs to have sounds when you move from step to step. And that will help us achieve the goal of getting people from here to there. Well, I got to prove that, don't I? Right?
Yeah.
Is it worth it? Like, maybe not. Maybe that's not the thing that's going to get people from here to here. So there are the basic, like, does it do the thing it's supposed to do? And I would argue on a Mini Cooper, that's, does it drive? Does it stop? Yeah. Does it turn? Yeah. Does it not explode into flames? Like, all of these real basic things that cars need to do. And then there's the, like, more important ones, or not the more important ones, sorry, the slightly less important ones, like, is it super fun to drive? You know, is it, does it handle sporty, or does it drive like a couch? Like, all of these things still important. I don't know, maybe it's a Maslow's hierarchy of design, where there's all, you know, these levels of what's important now, and they're all important, but some of them are just much easier to measure than others. And if you don't nail the, you know, people can use it and accomplish the task that they want to accomplish, then you shouldn't be spending time on the, it makes a fun spaceship sound when you turn it on.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Laura.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was great.